Hey guys, this is Evan from Gokaru coming to you with another video about my life here in Japan. So I wanted to talk about something today that's something you won't notice unless you're making a solid effort to actually assimilate into Japanese society and you've been here for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. This is something I've been kind of thinking about a little bit recently, something I noticed around that time. I've been here for around 10 years. But the thing is with YouTube, content surrounding Japan on YouTube is typically made, the most popular videos, the videos that have been like shown around the most often, are typically made by people who are fresh off the boat, or they've been here for a year or two, or they're people who've been here for 20 years or 30 years, and they're like, either they have this starry-eyed, new, like, honeymoon, kind of happy, everything's great view of Japan, or they're like these guys in their 50s or even 60s, or like, they're just like beat down and they've kind of given up on life. And they're complaining about everything. I've noticed that. But this is something that I think you'll notice after about 5 years of being here. So it's something that I haven't seen covered very much because it's not like a new thing. It's not something maybe you think about anymore if you've been here for a really long time, like a really long time. Now, I've been here for about 10 years, so it's a long time, but um, I think that okay, so what I'd like to talk about today is this kind of idea of like downgrading your status in Japan by getting better at Japanese or learning more about Japanese culture. Because this is something that will happen. In Japan, especially, there's this kind of unique relationship that the local people have with foreigners, and it's a part of a Japanese amoyari culture, which is like difficult to translate, but like the warmth that you give a guest when they enter your home, like that kind of like, that service culture that they have in Japan. You will experience that service culture if you don't know anything about Japan or Japanese, or you speak like a few words of Japanese. You will be treated like a king in Japan because you are a customer, you are a guest. You are a guest in their home, and they'll treat you really well, right? On the other side of that, if you've been here, I would say I felt like I crossed over into that other side, maybe after being here for like 7 years or so, 6 or 7 years. If you've been here for over like 6, 7, 8 years, 10 years, you've made a strong effort to get, to learn Japanese, learn the culture, which is like every day. There's some unspoken rule, something you're going to be learning here. Like it's thousands and thousands and thousands of things, not even including the language. If you've made that effort, then you can cross over into the advanced side of things, and you can just be treated like you're always going to be like the foreigner or a foreigner, but you can be treated more for like who you are, your own merits, and as somebody who knows a lot about Japan and knows a lot of Japanese, and you can break down a lot of barriers that would have existed and speak to people who might not have been comfortable being your friend before, or might have felt like it was just like a little bit too much for them to like have that interaction with somebody who doesn't know about Japanese things or can't speak Japanese well. When you cross over into that side, that becomes like a whole new kind of life. And I think I'm kind of like really starting to kind of get into that. Or I've been there for a while, but just because of like the timing of COVID and everything, like I had to kind of like find that kind of momentum in my life again because I moved like right when COVID happened. So now it's like I'm kind of like coming out of like this really long pandemic phase, and I'm starting to kind of interact with people now as somebody who's been here for 10 years, and it feels very different than it did in like 2019 when I'd been here for over 4 years, right? So I'm kind of like moving into that next stage, and also things are different now, like after the pandemic, and there's a lot to talk about there. But the most difficult phase in Japan, and the thing that isn't accounted for, that there are no systems for, that you just kind of like get thrown into like this limbo state, is when you're in the intermediate phase of learning Japanese, of learning things about Japan. Because, and this is something I never thought about, but as English speakers, we're used to hearing 100 different types of accents, 100 different types of like ways of expressing yourself, pigeon, all these kind of like made up, even like scrap together combinations of other languages and dialects and histories. And, I'm American, even like, with English I'm speaking right now is that, right? So, um, we're used to that kind of like having to have that adaptability. Now, there's a certain kind of like, maybe entitlement that comes with that I hate, that especially Americans I think have, or like that's, we're speaking American here, and they just expect everyone to learn English just because of where they're born and shit. I think that sucks. But at the same time, we're more inclined and more willing to give people a chance and the benefit of the doubt if they have an accent, if they're struggling a little bit, because we know that there's so many different types of English that, it kind of opens up our mind a little bit more, I think, to maybe the possibilities of like somebody having a really multicultural background or something like that, right? Just in general, not in the US, but just as an English speaker. But in Japan, I mean, you have to think about it. 99% of the people in this country are native Japanese speakers, right? 98%. And I mean, like as a white person, or as a non-Asian person speaking Japanese, we're still like a half of a percent or something like that here. And of that population, 90% of them are tourists or people who are here for a year or people who can barely speak any Japanese, right? So it's like it's we've gotten to a weird place as like a community of Japanese speaking foreign residents in Japan, because there's like, maybe at this point there's 30,000 people, 50,000 people in Japan, like enough to make a small Midwest town in the US of people who could speak Japanese decently as foreigners. Which means that there aren't a lot of opportunities for native Japanese people to hear different types of Japanese. I mean, as a Chicagoan, as a Midwesterner from the US, I think my Japanese is very good at this point, but I still am always going to have an accent for the rest of my life. And I'm not like really making that much of an effort to try to fix my pitch accent. I know people like Dogen, they're like crazy about, trying to sound 100% Japanese. I'm okay with having a slight accent. I'm not like trying to fix that. I'm trying to always make sure I can make people laugh. I can make people like, have fun and enjoy the conversation. I'm always focusing more on that flow of like, where the conversation is going to go based on the kind of questions people are going to ask me as a foreigner, and how I can like direct that into more interesting things that would be exciting for them to talk about and include them more and kind of like create that natural flow. I'm like thinking of maybe more of like, I don't know, like I'm thinking more of like this business networking sense or something. But, I'm always trying to just like have a connection with people, and I'm working on that constantly. But like working on my accent is something I've just always done, but never focused on. But I'm always going to have that. And like, you always have that to an extent, right? So that's never something that you can completely get over, but it's also something that like when you have a strong accent, when you're coming here, I think a lot of it depends on your attitude, but if you have a strong accent, especially in the countryside, and especially like 10 years ago now, I think it's different now, but it's slowly getting better. But the reality is that like there will be certain people, you'll be having a conversation, there'll be like one or two people, if you have a strong accent, I remember this so clearly, that there'll be one or two people at the table, if there's 10 people, who will understand everything you're saying, and they'll be translating it to the other Japanese people at the table. And then there'll be like 6 people who like won't understand what you're saying, and like 2 or 3 people will be like, oh, he means this, he means this, he means this. And I always like how I was always thinking like, how the fuck can they understand it if these people can understand it? Like, but I think the reality is there's just like certain people who have a proclivity, or maybe they're more interested in kind of like other cultures, and they understand like maybe what we're trying to express, and they can translate that to other Japanese people and become that bridge. And that the distance to get past, like to get from that point to getting to where you could just be a part of the conversation like any other Japanese person is very long, mostly because of the cultural aspects of like the language. It's like, for example, I mean, this is a simple one, but like when you go to get food in Japan, the first thing people are gonna do is they're gonna like try they're gonna wait, they're gonna try the food, and then they're all gonna say like in unison how great the food is. Like, oh, mitsumaine, oishine, like just in tandem. And that's just what you do when you go hiking. If you go on a trip, everyone's gonna like be like, oh, kire, kire, wow, it looks so amazing. Oh, this is such a beautiful spot. It's just kind of part of the rhythm of Japanese conversations, and you figure out where these rhythms kind of go, and like where people are likely to take things. But it's very specific to Japan, and like it's not as simple as like taking your personality and translating it into Japanese. It's like you have to create a new personality. So I always kind of like, I look back at like what I did in my, late teens, early 20s, and it's kind of like I relearned how to, I like created another version of my brain from scratch, basically. And I'm not sure if that was a good thing, like I'm at this point, I'm like, it was great. It was an amazing experience, but I think it also kind of fucked me up a little bit. And it's like, you can't go back once you do that. And especially when, like I said, when you're in that intermediate stage and like people are having like, they're not sure how to interact with you, and they would feel more comfortable interacting with you if you didn't speak any Japanese. That's a weird place to be. And then, when you're years into that, like, 'cause I would say like beginner Japanese is like very quick. You're very quick to get through that. Like if you're studying and you're putting the work in, it shouldn't take you a lot of time to get through beginner level Japanese, right? But intermediate Japanese is like, there's so much stuff I mean, you will be in intermediate level for like 5 years or something. I mean, there's so much. And then like, I would consider like I've been advanced, I would say, for like 5 years or something now, but I'm going to be studying for the rest of my life. So there's no end to it. But like that intermediate phase when people like, cause they're expecting you to be a certain kind of person. If you're a foreigner, they're expecting you to not understand things. They're expecting you to act a certain way. And when you're trying to learn Japanese, inadvertently you're going to be trying to become more Japanese or act more Japanese. And I think like when you're not fully, it's like it like kind of like forces people to set an expectation in their mind, and then when you can't meet that 100%, it's like people's brains short circuit or something. So you have to push through that, and you have to keep going, and it's going to take years. And I just, for that reason, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it like, I hesitate to like make these videos where it's like, oh, you should move to Japan, you should do this and that, because I know that like I'm kind of crazy. I mean, I know that like some of my mental health problems too, I've also fueled kind of like a lot of my, my ability to work hard and my ability to like keep pushing through that kind of stuff. Like I think if I had like a healthier childhood, I wouldn't have felt like okay with dealing with some of these things. I would have been like, oh, I feel like secure in this and I don't need to do that or whatever. But I'm like, I kept pushing through it. And maybe because like I had some past trauma and it was just like normalized for me to feel like that kind of isolated. But yeah, I mean, just like pushing through that, I don't think most people can do it. And so I can't recommend to most people to like move to Japan and try to get really good at speaking Japanese, because I just think it's not for most people, like to get through that middle period if you're really trying to assimilate here. So yeah, I mean, once you get through that though, something else I experienced, and I'll try to wrap up the video because it's getting long, but something else I experienced too is that like once you get to a certain level and your Japanese is good, people can tell that that you speak a Japanese, that it kind of takes some of that like, that weird tension out of the room. But I noticed myself also feeling like, it kind of like killed some of the conversation points. So like when you suck at Japanese, people will ask you all these questions about like, why are you studying Japanese, and like, why are you here, and blah blah blah. Like there's this kind of expectation that you're gonna leave, and it puts the kind of the spotlight on you, and then you end up kind of being the center of attention for a lot of unwanted reasons, but you're still the center of attention, and you kind of like have to push through that. But then once you're just actually good, it's like people kind of like don't give a shit anymore, and they're just talking to you like a person. And I'm like, oh yeah, shit. Now I need to learn how to like, navigate conversations in like this whole other, this whole other dimension in Japanese now. Cause like I know how to do that in English, but like, it took me a while to learn how to just have like normal conversations in Japanese where everything isn't about like, oh, Nihongo jozu, like your Japanese is so good, blah, blah, blah. Cause people stop doing that after a long time, I think, once you're good at Japanese. So I don't know. I mean, it's this whole thing, but yeah, the whole journey of like, getting through those different stages and then staying motivated and then like having a strong sense of self, but also being adaptable enough to make those changes to improve yourself, and maybe having some kind of like drive to improve and connect with people more. It's like it takes a very specific mix and a very specific type of personality to make that happen. Maybe I have that. I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I think I've done well, but I also feel like I haven't handled some things in Japan as well as other foreigners I've met, because I have the ability to do that, and like I don't accept things as easily as other people. Like I'm not as happy-go-lucky and stuff. So it's difficult, and just finding that balance in your mind, I think, is difficult. So yeah, I don't know, a long kind of rambling video, but I thought maybe you guys would find that interesting. This is a topic in particular that I don't even know how I would do a scripted video on. Like I'm thinking I want to do more scripted videos, but like I don't even know how to talk about this without it coming across as really either like egotistical or negative, or I don't know, and like to make the video interesting. So I thought I would just talk. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And yeah, I'm going to be making more videos about this, about my life in Japan. I'm hoping to do more edited videos coming up here. But yeah, if you'd like to learn more about my life here, just hear more of these kind of unscripted thoughts about things I've kind of gone through, like the psychology of living here and stuff, I'd really appreciate you subscribing to the channel, and liking the video, or not is okay too. I appreciate you watching either way. And yeah, you guys have a great day. Okay, see ya.